DEA agent from Milwaukee, John McGarry. So, please listen.
That's me. I'm John McGarry. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk to you about the drug threat in Wisconsin and some other issues here. If you have questions at any point during the presentation, please go ahead and ask them, or ask them at the end, whatever you're comfortable with. So, when I go around and talk to communities or law enforcement groups, I generally get asked about a few things. Where does DEA sit in the United States? And these are our offices. I think we're at 250, 251 in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. I supervise the entire state. Our biggest presence is obviously in the southeast in Milwaukee, where the population is largest. And then we have an office in Madison and Green Bay, and a satellite in Eau Claire. DEA, to counter the threat, also has offices in, this has changed. It was at 93, I think it's now at 87, based on some international dynamics of late. But to address the drug threat, to get intelligence, to work cooperatively beyond our borders, DEA has agents, men and women, stationed far forward, working and living in foreign countries. I myself spent time in Iraq, Afghanistan, and then I lived 3 years in Istanbul, Turkey, working with the Turkish National Police, also in Tbilisi, Georgia. And the goal there is these threats, this information, it's impactful to the U.S. If we can make cases with foreign counterparts to arrest America's adversaries through foreign governments, that's better than those people, those criminal organizations coming to the U.S. and doing ill to our citizens. So the big things people ask me about all the time of late are, what about drug cartels? I'll talk about that. What about fentanyl? I'll talk about that, because everybody's heard about that. What about China? And how is China impacting the drug problem in the United States? I hear about China, I hear about precursor chemicals. And then finally, what's going on in Wisconsin? How do 1, 2, and 3 impact the people that live here? So, drug cartels, as we know, exist predominantly in Mexico. And I will speak plainly about facts that I know about Mexico. It's a tough time down there, below the border. These are some pictures from Mexican cartel organizations. And why I put them up here is to show the level of organization, unification, and sort of identity that these organizations have. They transcend what you would typically view as a criminal gang in the United States, with the exception of maybe old organized crime. But most criminal gangs would be kind of not clearly defined. They may just live in a specific area. The drug cartels in Mexico are very well organized, very well staffed, very well funded, self-funded, to the tune of probably $6 or $7 billion in annual return. And finally, they are extraordinarily well armed. As we can see here, I'll go to the alarm thing. And the reason I show this is, are there any military folks in here? Veterans or anybody? No? So this guy's holding an AT-4 disposable rocket launcher, right? Procured from the United States at some point, but used in Mexico against the police. This is pictures of an RPG-5. They have a 50 caliber heavy barrel machine gun there. These are all military grade weapons that we never see used against U.S. law enforcement. But in Mexico, the police and government forces are coming up against these people all the time. And what I've left out of this also is the cartels to exert their influence are just the troves and troves of murders and killings and dead bodies that they've littered across the country to make both a statement and to continue to exert control. Here we can see this is the results of a law enforcement goes to do an arrest operation in Mexico, right? And it turns into an 8-hour gunfight with cartel forces. And these are pictures you'd expect to have seen in Mogadishu or Baghdad or any number of countries where the U.S. has been engaged in long-term military conflict, but this is in fact the forces that were arrayed against the Mexican law enforcement. And this isn't something you can defend against. You don't have a car, your police car, your cruiser doesn't stop these bullets, or your body armor. This is an extraordinary amount of firepower. And the armored vehicles, those are the bad guys bringing those, not the good guys. The bad guys are showing up in open back pickup trucks with Federales or Policia written on them. The other reason, so aside from all the violence and the multitude of weaponry and money in Mexico that contributes to cartel success or to cartel survivability, is some elements of the Mexican government. There are allegations that the corruption goes all the way to the top, to the president's office. There have been rumors that the president, before he became president, took bags with $250 million in cash prior to his election into the national office 7 years ago from the Sinaloa cartel. $250 million, so that he would turn a blind eye, change his view. He had a soft view. The outgoing president just changed power this month. He had a soft view in pushing the cartels. A soft view in the cartels means hard times for us here. This gentleman right here, extradited, charged in the U.S. This was their top law enforcement guy, was on the take. Top guy. So that would be like Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, being dirty. That's that guy, Garcia Luna. And he just was extradited to the U.S. last year, or 2 years ago, and charged on the case that DEA worked with this guy. He knew everything we did. The FBI worked with this guy. He knew everything we did. The Department of Justice, every attorney that dealt with the Mexican government for prosecuting cases, for extradition, for sensitive wiretaps on both sides of the border, for use of informants and cooperating witnesses, this guy knew them all and was on the take. Makes it hard to be confident in things happening down there in a collaborative way, for sure. So, I hope I'm not fear-mongering too much here. The final piece is, these are both maps provided by the Mexican government. This map shows their disposition, roughly, of law enforcement. So this is good guys here. Green is military forces in the country in their respective areas, and red is law enforcement, federal police. The point I'm making is, those numbers overlaid with these activities, this is the bad guy map. Basically what they're saying is, there's not enough of these guys to counter this. Those are all the smuggling routes that are controlled by the cartels. Fortunately, well, I guess I showed you this map, the picture isn't that rosy, but we have cartel presence in the United States. What does that mean? Does that mean that the same people that are committing target assassinations and murdering people for cooperating with the government, they're attacking police officers at their home, they're threatening law enforcement, they're taking pictures of their families? Common thing in Mexico, but go to the local law enforcement folks, show them a picture of their families, and say, if you're not in the take, we'll kill your family and your kids on the way to school tomorrow. Right? Local cop gets seen that. Masked guys show up, you sit in his cruiser, we'll kill your family if you don't come to school tomorrow, if you don't cooperate. So that's the level of power and influence they have. In the US, we still maintain our boundaries, right? What this map shows is, from bluer to not so blue, or from bluer to white gray, is the amount of cartel influence. Those are cartel-connected investigations, roughly, in the United States. As you would expect, it's mostly blue on the states that share a common border with the United States. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, right? And then obviously some other states that have significant populations, because there's an expat population, an immigrant population that live in that area that have connections to familiar relations below the border. So Illinois, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, New York, predictable places. Yes, Wisconsin has those same elements here. We don't have leadership generally in this state that we know of. And why is that? Why, if there's people, why don't we have leadership here? That's the way the cartels operate. And I'm going to circle back to how they operate a flat model. Now, in Mexico, there's two main cartels. Does anyone know what they are? I see you guys in the back. I'm not going to ask you. I bet they know. They're just not, they're like cops. We got the back of the room. We're watching you. We're making sure the cartel guys aren't coming up to the third floor while you're doing the presentation. And I thank you for that, all right? I actually brought my gun today, which is getting to be a rarity as I get up here in years. So, okay, the two cartels are the Sinaloa cartel, right? That's, anybody watched Narcos on Netflix? Thank you. I knew you did, I'm sure. I recommend it to everybody, okay? So you have the Sinaloa cartel. They operate primarily here in Sinaloa in blue, right? Sinaloa, Durango, Sonora, directly below California. The gateways, the ports of entry to California, or they call them in Mexico the porteros, those belong to the Sinaloa cartel. They will fight and die and commit extreme violence to maintain those gateways. And why is that? Because California, I don't think it is now, but at one time was the third largest economy in the world. That means it's a massive drug market as well. And there's a lot of people crossing that border every day in San Diego. San Ysidro Port of Entry, I think, is the busiest border crossing in the world. So more people cross daily between there, so a lot of smuggling can happen. The other cartel, you hear a lot about CJNG, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, right? Or the Jalisco cartel. That's a little newer, more upstart organization. You can see their their control area in Mexico. Now, they don't have those gates like Sinaloa has there, so they are constantly fighting. That's why you have friction. They're trying to get their products to the United States, and they got to go through Sinaloa or contested territory to do so. Okay. Now, who's in charge of these cartels, and why don't we just go after them? And I've been asked about drone strikes, I've been asked about Tomahawk missiles, I've been asked about SEAL Team 6. In DOJ, we don't do extrajudicial, extraterritorial, targeted assassinations. We just do prosecutions. We collect evidence, and then we charge people in a very permissive United States justice system. And then we work with foreign governments to bring those people to justice here through extradition, right? And then they sit in U.S. jails if they get, and when they're done, put them on a plane, 25 years later, flying back to Mexico. In the United States, generally, I speak in general terms because there's always exceptions, the cartel model is like an umbrella. The people we have here aren't really the high levels of leadership. Those people stay in Mexico. What we have are more flatter, subordinate people that don't know as much about the operation, that are more in a broker, customer, kind of retail capacity. So I get this next slide, right? They're more like Walmart, right? These people selling drugs in Wisconsin, they don't know who the leaders are. They just know who the next person above them is, just like at Walmart. It's like you walk into Walmart and you need something, you go ask somebody in that department. But that person that is in charge of a department for, let's say, where can I get paper towels? Down there with paper products. The person directing them, they don't know who's making the drugs in Mexico, who's getting the chemicals from China, or who's bringing the money back across the border. They only know what's happening in their space. So in the US, it makes it tough to target the organizations because their leadership isn't here. It's a lot of workers. So the hierarchy is very flat in the US. The cartels have shifted, kind of like Walmart, they're a retail enterprise. They want to profit. They are nimble. Like I said, they're dealing with a $6 billion, $8 billion, $10 billion return on investment. They can adapt faster than we can adapt. And they have done an excellent job in the last 5 years of moving away from less dependable sources, cocaine, heroin. Those are things that have to be grown organically. That means a planting season, climate, irrigation, harvesting, converting those things from a leafy plant into heroin or cocaine, and then smuggling them to the United States. And cocaine, the coca plant, doesn't grow in Mexico. It grows only in a very particular region, the Andean region of South America, North South America, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. Outside that, you can't grow the coca plant pretty much anyplace else. It is climate intolerant for those places. They do and have grown a little bit of heroin in Mexico, but again, you can fly a drone over a farm and see what kind of crop or fly a spot aircraft they're growing. So that stuff is tough to conceal. You can make all the fentanyl and meth you want in a room this size and nobody will ever know. And you make a lot more money and you have a lot less people and a lot less exposure. Incoming precursors, not by those two, those guys aren't going to let precursors in, thank you, John. Incoming precursors, they cook up the batch, they got one guy's a cook, they got somebody got working the drying tables, and they make 100 kilos of fentanyl that can go to the US and go for $2 million. And they just took in 10 gallons of precursor and yielded that much. So their out-of-pocket cost on a $2 million return might be $1,000. And there's only 2 people, 3 people in the know. Now, you try to get cocaine from the Andean region, through the Coast Guard, through the Navy, through Customs, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, onto the US border, in a submersible submarine, or a fast boat, or an airplane, that's a little tougher. That's some of the best patrolled and monitored space in the world, between, basically from Colombia, Panama, into Mexico. So they pivot because they see 2 things: less risk and liability making fentanyl or methamphetamine, and they see a demand from our market based on prescription habits of physicians 15 or 20 years ago. So they are masters of marketing adaptation. I'm saying they're kind of like Walmart in that, but yes, they're reading the market and profiting from that. And finally, they're also really good at branding. This is a photo of CJ&G. That's their leader right here. You can barely see his face, but like right here, that's El Mencho. He's the head of the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. So that's them in Mexico at a Mexican village doing charity outreach. So like your Toys for Tots equivalent, or your cops collect coats for kids. That's them doing it. They are filling a void that the Mexican government is not filling. It's tough to compete with resources when the bad guys got those kind of resources. And here, people ask, well, who have we got? Who have we arrested? What have we done? So the top guy, Mayo, and this is excellent, he was arrested in an operation. Some of you, anybody hear about this? Okay, this is going to help my point. So the top guy in the Sinaloa cartel here, Ismael Zapata Garcia, was brought on to an airplane, coerced onto an airplane. Some say they put a hood over his head and gave him a sedative, and flown at night into El Paso and then arrested by DEA and FBI when the plane landed. That guy had been untouchable for 40 years. Untouchable. But you know what's remarkable? We're all here for the same reason. And I only know about this because I live in this space and breathe it too many hours a day. But the fact is, we whacked the head of the toughest and biggest cartel right off, sitting in jail in the US, waiting to go to trial on a case out of Chicago and New York. And it really is not going to make much of a difference. That's what I'm saying. Flat organizations like Walmart. If you took away the Walton family, Walmart would persevere. Same thing here. It's just like the Hydra. Cut the arm off the Hydra. Cut the head off a Hydra, right? The many-headed snake or many-headed dragon, and 2 replace them. That's what this is. That's why it's so hard to take action. And then that's their, Sinaloa's, the two big ones I said were Sinaloa and CGNG, just another picture of CGNG. Well, how does the cartels, how are they so productive? They're making fentanyl, they're not growing plants, they're making methamphetamine. What gives them that access to power? What gives them that leverage? It's logistics, like a business. Here, if you can see, I don't know if you all can see so this is Jalisco, the port of Manzanillo, pardon me, and this is Mazatlan. These are the two biggest Pacific ports on the west coast of Mexico. No, there's no ports on the Gulf Coast. All that, just a little geography thing which I never really appreciate myself. The Pacific is vast. Anybody in the Navy? Pacific is vast. I was on a Navy ship, it crashed when I was a Marine, so that's a different story. But it's so big, there's no way you could monitor it, detect it. Like that space between Asia and the Southern Ocean to the Mexican coast is enormous. We've tried. That's your Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, sort of midway Pacific Islands thing. That's all there is between Asia and the west coast of the US. There's a couple of volcanic atolls. So these two ports can get container ships and commerce all day long. The other thing is, what two countries are most of our goods that we consume, durable goods and light commercial stuff, manufactured? China. Or, was that another one? Anyone? Mexico, right? Where's your Ford F-150 probably put together? Mexico. Where's your Electrolux dryer put together? Mexico. Your Frigidaire, right? Where's your, you name it, stop naming them. Mexico. So goods are coming in from China, precursor chemicals are in those shipments. They're going to Mexico and being assembled there. The other thing is, Sinaloa controls this port, not the Mexican government. CJNG, the other cartel, controls this port, not the Mexican government. The level of corruption, these are massive ports, like Port of Los Angeles, thousands of vessels coming a day, disembarking hundreds of thousands of containers. They're being loaded on trucks and rail cars. They all can't be monitored. Hey, you're on shift today from 1 a.m. till 9 p.m. Here's a picture of your wife going to work. You're going to turn your head the other way when this container comes off a cruise ship from China. I'll give you $1,000. Okay, that threat of violence and $1,000, that'll be enough for me. And there you go, precursor chemicals, day after day after day. The Mexican government can't do anything about that. Because even if they can, the cartel just comes in, you're fired, investigation, corrupt guy gone. Okay, new guy comes in his first day on the job, what do you think happens? Cartel shows right back up and says, hey, the other guy, he was helping us out, and here's why. Again, threat of violence. If he doesn't have a family, don't worry, they'll find other ways to leverage. So, is anything good happening? Yes. Yes. In the US, in the last couple of years here, we have seen decreases. Now, these totals still far outweigh any other country in the world. I think they still outweigh every other country in the world put together in terms of consumption and seizure here in the US. So, yes, cocaine, this orange guy, down, good. Methamphetamine, down, also good. Fentanyl, decreasing, it's pretty close. And heroin, decreasing. Heroin's kind of gone out of favor, which is, I don't know if we can count that a good thing because it's mostly been replaced by fentanyl. And then the downside of the successes is there's still a lot of fatalities related to drug use. Not as much as there were in 22. That's probably a byproduct of some better messaging. I hear all sorts of theories. Like, what are they, why? Why are they down this year? Come speak to us. Messaging, there's probably a limited capacity of people that are going to consume a potentially lethal at-risk drug that may result in death, if that makes sense. Like, there's only so many people that are at risk for overdose, so that has a sort of a burnout rate. The drug supply is really unreliable. People are adding a ton of bad stuff to it, and when people think they're taking fentanyl, the story used to be, oh, I take heroin, and I got fentanyl, and now it's I take fentanyl, I got some other thing that was lethal. And that other thing could be anything. Chris and I were down here talking about, they're adding a substance called BTMP, which is a PVC UV blocker, so PVC pipe. So you've got a PVC pipe in the roof here. You add UV blocker to it so it doesn't break down in the sunlight. They're adding that to fentanyl. Why? Because it's cheap and they don't care. Why are they killing people? They don't care. The market exists. The market persists. They're not worried about the customer's health or well-being. Okay, so fentanyl, second item on my list here. Still lethal in that amount. Micrograms, small grams to the uninitiated user, inhaled, injected, eaten, that is lethal. Our deaths trended very strongly up, as I said 2 slides ago, and now they've gone down a little bit. There's a little bit of rebound. We hope that number will continue down. It looks like this year, Milwaukee County, which is sort of the bellwether for the state, is trending down. Some of the problem we see is the urban areas decline, the rural areas are going to increase. One of the things we've seen added to fentanyl is xylazine. My father-in-law is an equine vet, so he lives and breathes stuff. Xylazine, the commercial name is Rompin. It is a equine tranquilizer. Somehow, some chemist for the cartels decided that xylazine could be an additive or a substitute to fentanyl. And the problem is, when you give somebody an opioid, you hear a lot of people that overdose, their heart rate slows down, their respiratory rate, and that's what eventually kills them, or their pre-existing medical condition. Xylazine is a sedative, right? Dissociative sedative. So when you give that to somebody in that condition, it more than increases the likelihood of death. So the point with xylazine is there's all sorts of unknown chemicals being added to the supply coming to the U.S. And that's because the cartels are just trying to take advantage of cheap and available things that maybe very smallly mimic the drugs that they're trying to sell. And it's because what the Chinese are providing to them is precursors. Talked about China's role here repeatedly. It's sort of this unbroken thing of money and chemicals, money and chemicals. How does the money get back to China? I'll tell you, it gets smuggled across the border, less so now. See a lot more cryptocurrency, right? Maybe some of you are speculating in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Tether, Ethereum, Tron. Every day, they are collecting money in cities across the U.S., the Mexican organizations are. They are putting it into cryptocurrency. As far as I can tell, I've seen a very exhaustive cryptocurrency case in the last 2 years. There's nobody on that platform except for drug dealers, terrorist organizations, and weapons, people trying to procure like illegal weapons parts, and then all the other dark stuff that I won't mention, but we can all guess what that is. So they collect the money, it gets sent back to Mexico via cryptocurrency, and then they cut their profit off. If they need chemicals, they just send it to a Chinese organization, the Chinese chemical broker, and the Chinese chemical broker kicks out a new load of chemicals. That's how easy. What changed is, it used to be a bag of cash would go from Milwaukee to the border, that's 1,300 miles, probably the shortest distance, and that car had to go through a lot of law enforcement choke points. See, you drive to Florida, you see the trooper sitting on the interstate. Anybody ever driven to Florida and see a trooper sitting on the interstate? And you went by that guy, and your spouse is like, "Look out!" And you're listening to your music, and you're just like, "What? Oh, didn't pay attention to you." You're probably sitting there on an interdiction detail, just identifying and profiling potential money-carrying or drug-carrying cars. With cryptocurrency, you pick up that money, they put it in the crypto system, 15 seconds later, it's hopped 25 times through bank accounts, and it's in their hands. That's a lot less risk than trying to transit through the southern US with a load car full of money. Adaptation. And then this is a point I make. This, if you take nothing away from this tonight, other than fentanyl is bad, drugs are bad, Mexican cartels are bad, all right, take everything away you can, please. The connection between the cartels in China is a real thing. It is an inseparable line. They don't survive without Chinese precursor chemicals coming across the ocean, going to Mexico, and arriving in our cities. There's only one market for Mexican drugs, and it's here in the US. So, what's happened in Wisconsin? What's new? I talked to you a couple years ago, so I won't talk about anything I talked about then. We see a lot more seizures we can connect back. That's probably because of new technology and new techniques and new intel. Back to actual cartel places up south of the border. And we see a transition of marketing, not just in profit, but in presentation. This is perhaps the most nefarious thing the cartels have done, is they are manufacturing pills, actual photo of a seizure from Wisconsin, they're manufacturing pills to mimic or to appear as if they are tame, palatable, tasty, desirable. It's not just the coloring, they're adding butter flavoring to them and other odor softening agents so that when you open a bag of fentanyl pills or when people get 2 or 3 fentanyl pills, they don't smell like some nasty chemical that's being used to manufacture them. Think about that. We'll talk about increasing desirability for younger consumers more than anybody, right? If you're 25 and over, you're probably like, whatever, the color is irrelevant. You know, if the doctor said, take it. But if you're 25 and under, or 20 and under, 15 and under, that's who that is targeting. They're pushing down the market age that they're trying to engage with. I would say that the primary target for this type of pill is high school age kids between 15 and 19. Most of our fentanyl we see in the state, changing trade, it doesn't come here as a powder. It comes here as this. These are oxycodones. They would call them M-Box 30s. These are all fentanyl. You can see, if you've ever taken oxycodone, it's got an M on one side, the letter M in a box. Another side says 30 for 30 milligrams. This is also to make this stuff more palatable to adults. Note the coloring, right? A brighter blue, to make it, the ones on the bottom aren't as well done. But yes, it's targeted marketing, targeted advertising. And then I'll just close with this. They're trying to do whatever they can to get drugs into our communities, right? That's fentanyl pill pants that were underneath somebody at an airport, not Milwaukee Airport. And that's a prosthetic leg that they filled up with fentanyl pills. And the person with the prosthetic leg was walking across the border every day. Across the border, prosthetic leg, get to the other side, hollow leg, it was a real thing. After you had the hollow leg, and I went back across the border. That was a very dear friend of mine, just retired, sent me that photo. And he said, his point was, you'd been doing this for 22 years, you thought you saw everything, well guess what? And you always guess the hollow leg thing, but you never think you're gonna see it. So, any questions about anything? No? Okay, hopefully not too aghast. There is hope. The hope is in the work being done. I will say, I get up here, yes, there's an element of fear of this, but the quality of the people still doing the job, the men and women at DEA, on the task forces, appreciation for road officers that are more hungry and voracious out there than ever, and district attorneys and prosecutors, they are still very much into taking care of our communities. So the tools and the people are there. The piece that I ask all of you is, when you're interacting with young people, or grandchildren, or neighbors' kids, is don't be scared to ask them to have the conversation. That's what I find the biggest thing is just a lack of knowledge. right? The message should be, if it didn't come from a doctor, you can't trust it. Don't make that decision, because the takeaway is it could be lethal every time. So, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. God bless.
I want to thank John McGarry for his speech and for coming here. We will get on to the award being given out. I'd like the officer that gave the nomination to Alfred O'Neill, I just say it, Neito, come up and tell us why he nominated him.
All right, my name is Jeremy Lingle. I'm a sergeant on the second shift for Watertown Police Department. When Christine had contacted our agency about this award, we put it out to the entire department asking for suggestions for nominations. There's one name that repeatedly came up, and that was Officer Raul Nieto. So I wrote this nomination, but it's kind of a compilation of things that came from a lot of different people within our agency, and I just put it together and put my name on it for him. But we're grateful to the support, grateful to the Elks Lodge for your support over the years of our agency and of police. It's an honor for our agency to have one of our officers selected for this award, and we do appreciate that. Officer Nieto has been an officer with our department for a little over 5 years now. So he was hired in 2019. In his 5 years as a patrol officer, he's become a respected member of the department, an informal leader, and a mentor to younger officers, and has displayed a strong and consistent work ethic. One area of focus for Officer Nieto, obviously, has become drug enforcement. And we see him regularly going above and beyond the call of duty in his own investigations and in the assistance he provides to other officers within our department and within other law enforcement agencies. Ro regularly, willingly, and happily will come in outside of his normal work hours even to assist the Jefferson County Drug Task Force with their investigations and to assist other officers within our department with their drug investigations when the people involved speak only Spanish. But he doesn't just sit around waiting to translate or just translate when he's asked. He actively participates in the investigations. He works as a liaison with Spanish-speaking friends and family members associated with people involved in the investigation. Sometimes he's traveling to other communities with the task force to go work where they're doing their investigations. Always willingly, often on very short notice, on his off days, over the phone. He always is willing to help out. Even this past year, assisting the task force in one investigation that resulted in a seizure of over 150 kilograms of cocaine. He's very active in community events, again, frequently serving as a liaison between our department and the Hispanic community in our city. And you can read the rest of this if you want after we're done. I'll wrap it up here. His drug investigations are frequent and serve as opportunities not only to get drugs off the street, but like I said, to assist other officers and for other people to be able to learn from him. He clearly believes, like Agent Camarena, that one person can make a difference, and he works toward that goal every day. So, thank you.
This is the third year that I've been doing the Enrique Camarena Award, And the Watertown Beaver Dam Lodge is proud to present our local Enrique Camarena Award to Officer Raul Naita. Would Officer Naita please come forward? Present you with this award and this. And thank you for all you do. Would you like to say something?
Just want to say thank you to the Elks Club for this award, and thank you for your support to law enforcement, to the Watertown Police Department and the Jefferson County Drug Task Force. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to do the right thing for my community, and obviously my family. Thanks for their support and help. I'm honored to receive this award. I never thought becoming a cop to receive awards. But I want to become a police officer to help my community, to help and guide those without a voice, those that are often hide in the shadows waiting for that light of hope. And that light of hope is what Agent Enrique Camarena left us. So we can use it to illuminate our path to fight the evil and drug trafficking and to guide those waiting for that light. Agent Enrique Camarena legacy, hard work, and dedication will continue not only by the ones who have been fortunate to receive this award, but it will continue with everyone that is willing to fight drug addiction and drug trafficking. We are fortunate to have the Elks Club support and dedication in our community to keep Agent Enrique Camarena legacy alive.